What would you do if your missing child called you after 20 years? At exactly 2:17 a.m., Angela Carter's phone lit up in the dark. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Almost. Because after 2 decades of silence, hope becomes dangerous. But something made her tap the screen. A voicemail. There was static at first. Breathing. Uneven. Like someone trying to decide if they should speak or hang up forever. Then, Mom? Angela froze. Not moved. Not blinked. Frozen. It's me. I remember everything now. The phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor. Angela Carter is 52 years old, but in many ways, she never left the day she was 32, the day her son disappeared. His name was Ethan Carter. He was 6, bright, talkative, obsessed with toy trucks and dinosaurs, the kind of child who asked too many questions and laughed too loudly in quiet places. And then one afternoon in 2006, he vanished. No scream, no struggle, no witnesses who saw anything clearly, just a toy truck left in the sand and the silence that never ended. Police searched for months, then years. Leads dried up. Files were closed. People moved on. But Angela didn't. She kept his room exactly the same. Same bedsheets. Same drawings taped to the wall. Same nightlight plugged in every single night. Waiting. Her husband David stopped talking about Ethan years ago. Grief turned him quiet, distant, almost detached. But Angela, she stayed in the pain. Because letting go meant accepting something she refused to believe, that her son was gone forever. And now, that voice. Older, deeper, but unmistakably his. Angela scrambled to pick up the phone, replaying the message over and over, like it might disappear if she stopped. I remember everything now. What does that even mean? Everything what? He was 6. There was nothing to remember. Unless there was something he was never supposed to know. Angela immediately called the number back. It didn't ring. It didn't connect. It simply said, "This number is no longer in service." Her heart dropped. And then another message came through. Not a voicemail, a text. 3 chilling words. Don't find me. Angela's breath caught as the screen lit up again with one final line. You're not safe either. What if your child wasn't just taken, but turned into someone else? Angela didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. She sat on the edge of her bed, replaying the voicemail until the words started to blur together. Every breath, every pause, every crack in his voice. It was real. It was him. It had to be. But then that last message echoed louder than anything else. You're not safe either. Safe from who? By morning, Angela couldn't hold it in anymore. She rushed into the kitchen, phone in hand, and showed the message to her husband, David. He read it once, then again, and something changed in his face. Not relief, not disbelief, fear. The kind of fear you try to hide but can't quite control. Angela, this could be a scam. A scam? After 20 years? Angela stared at him, waiting, hoping for something else. A question, a reaction, anything. But he didn't ask to hear the voice. He didn't say Ethan's name. He just stepped back. And that's when something inside Angela shifted. Because if your missing son suddenly calls you after 20 years, wouldn't you want to hear his voice? Angela grabbed her keys and left before the silence swallowed her whole. She drove straight to the police station, but what she found there didn't feel like closure. It felt like something worse. Ethan's case file was thin. Too thin. Pages were missing, reports incomplete, names blacked out. It didn't make sense. This wasn't just a cold case. It was gutted. Frustrated and desperate, Angela tracked down someone who might still remember, Mark Ellison, the retired detective who originally worked Ethan's case. At first, he didn't want to talk, said it was too long ago. But when Angela played the voicemail, everything changed. His expression darkened. "There were things about your son's disappearance that never sat right with me." Angela leaned in. "What things?" Mark hesitated, then said something that made her stomach drop. The case was shut down. From above. Faster than it should have been. From above? Who had that kind of power over a missing child case? Angela left her house shaken, but determined. Back in her car, she replayed the voicemail again. This time, she turned the volume all the way up. And that's when she heard it. Faint. Buried under Ethan's voice. A second voice. Calm. Urgent. "Ethan, we have to go." Angela's grip tightened on the phone, because her son never answered to that name. If he wasn't called Ethan, then who had he been living under all these years? Angela sat in her car, heart pounding, replaying that one moment over and over. "Ethan, we have to go." That voice wasn't confused. It wasn't guessing. It knew him, but not as Ethan. So what did that mean? Had someone raised her son under a different name? Angela couldn't ignore it anymore. She went home and locked herself in the bedroom, pulling out old tapes, photos, anything that could ground her in reality. But reality was slipping. Fast. She uploaded the voicemail to an audio forum, asking for help cleaning the background noise. Hours passed like minutes. Then a reply came in. A user had isolated the audio, enhanced it, and what they found sent a chill straight through her chest. A train station announcement in the background, clear enough to make out fragments. Platform 4. Departing. Angela's breath caught. A public place, movement, transit. Whoever Ethan was with, they were traveling. And suddenly, this didn't feel like a random message anymore. It felt controlled. Planned. Then her phone buzzed again. Another message. Not a voicemail this time. A text. "I found something." Angela's hands trembled as she opened it. Attached was a blurry photo. A document. At first, it didn't make sense, just faded text and an old picture. Then she saw it. Her son's face. 6 years old. Same school photo. But the name beneath it wasn't Ethan Carter. It read, Lucas Meyer. Angela felt like the air had been ripped from her lungs. Raising stakes. She zoomed in, scanning every detail. The document looked official, clinical, stamped, archived. This wasn't fake. This was identity. Her son had been living as someone else for years. But why? And who would go that far? Angela traced the origin of the document through metadata and markings. It led to something unexpected. A private medical facility. Closed. Abandoned. Shut down 15 years ago. Her instincts screamed at her to stop, but she didn't. She drove there the next morning. Broken gates, rusted signage, silence. Inside, dust-covered files still remained, and what she found changed everything. Patient logs, children admitted without guardians, notes about memory conditioning and identity stabilization. Then one file made her hands go cold. Age, 6. Status, transfer approved. Authorization, parent request. Parent request? Angela stumbled back, shaking. There was only one other parent, only one person who could have signed that. That night, she stood in her living room, staring at David. Her voice barely held together as she asked, "What did you do to our son?" And this time, David didn't deny it. Imagine finding out your child wasn't stolen, but handed over. Angela couldn't breathe. David sat across from her, his face pale, his hands shaking, but not from denial, from guilt. And in that moment, before he even spoke, she knew. He had done something. Something irreversible. "It wasn't supposed to go like this," David finally said, his voice cracking. Angela's stomach twisted. "Then how was it supposed to go, David? Our son disappeared, David, for 20 years. David buried his face in his hands before looking up again. "Ethan wasn't okay," he said. "You remember the episodes." Angela froze. Of course she remembered. The nightmares, the confusion, the moments where Ethan would forget things. Small things at first, then bigger ones. Names, places, even her face once for just a few seconds. But he was 6. 6. "You said we'd handle it together," Angela whispered. "I tried," David shot back. "Doctors told me it could get worse, that he might lose himself completely. They offered a solution, an experimental program. They said they could reset his mind, remove the damage." Angela stared at him, horrified. Reset his mind? David nodded, tears forming. "I didn't tell you because I knew you'd say no, and I couldn't watch him disappear piece by piece. I thought I was saving him." Saving him. Angela let out a hollow laugh. "You didn't save him," she said quietly. "You erased him." David's silence said everything. Consequences begin unfolding. The facility, the files, the parent request. It all lined up now. David had signed the papers. He had handed their son over to strangers who promised a cure, but instead they rewrote his identity, changed his name, his life, everything. "But the facility shut down," Angela said, piecing it together. "So what happened to him?" David shook his head. "They told me he was transferred, that the program would continue somewhere else. Then they stopped responding." "You didn't go after him?" Angela's voice broke. "I tried," David whispered, "but everything was gone. Records wiped. People disappeared. It was like the whole place never existed." Angela stepped back, disgust and grief crashing into each other. For 20 years, she thought her son was taken by a stranger. But the truth? He had been given away by the one person who was supposed to protect him. Later that night, Angela returned to the abandoned facility alone. She searched deeper this time, past the obvious rooms, past the broken offices, until she found a locked storage area. Inside, boxes, tapes, records they didn't want anyone to find. And one name kept appearing, over and over again. Dr. Samuel Rourke, the lead neurologist, the man who ran the program, the man who disappeared when everything shut down. Angela's heart pounded as she flipped through the files, because one note stood out. Subjects are beginning to recover suppressed memories. Recover. Memories. Her hands trembled as realization hit. Someone had told Ethan the truth, and that someone was still out there. What would you say if your child finally came back but wasn't the same person you lost? Angela didn't hesitate. The moment she found Dr. Samuel Rourke's last known address in those files, she followed it. Hours of driving, no sleep, no second thoughts, because after 20 years, she was done waiting. The house was quiet, isolated, almost hidden, and when the door opened, it wasn't Rourke. It was him, Ethan, Older, taller, hardened by a life she was never part of. For a moment, neither of them moved. Angela's lips trembled. Her hands shook. "Ethan," she whispered. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he studied her like someone looking at a memory they weren't sure was real. "I used to be Ethan, then I was Lucas." His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. Something fractured. Angela stepped forward, tears spilling freely now. "I never stopped looking for you." He looked away. "I know." Inside, Dr. Rourke sat quietly, watching, older now, worn down. And finally, the truth came out. Rourke explained everything. After David signed Ethan into the program, the facility began identity restructuring, wiping memory pathways and rebuilding personality frameworks. But the program wasn't stable. When funding collapsed, they panicked. Children were relocated through illegal channels, given new identities, new families. Ethan became Lucas Meyer, raised by people who had no idea where he really came from. But the human brain doesn't erase that easily. Fragments remained. Nightmares, flashbacks, a sense that something wasn't right. Years later, Rourke, haunted by guilt, tracked down former patients. Ethan was one of them. He showed him the files, the truth, everything. That's why Ethan said, "I remember everything now." Angela didn't forgive Rourke, and she didn't forgive David. What followed was unavoidable. The truth went public. Authorities reopened the case. The facility's operations were exposed. Multiple staff members were investigated. Rourke turned himself in, providing evidence for reduced sentencing. David was arrested, charged with unlawful medical consent, fraud, and endangerment. Families of other children came forward, some reunited, others devastated by what they learned. The story spread fast, but for Angela, none of that mattered as much as the man standing in front of her. Her son, alive, but changed. Ethan struggled. Therapy, identity confusion, anger. He wasn't the little boy who vanished. And Angela wasn't the same mother either. They've had to learn each other again, from scratch. Final resolution moment, no cliffhanger. Months later, the house felt different. Ethan stood in his old bedroom, the one Angela never touched. But now, it wasn't frozen anymore. Some things were gone. Some things were new. On the shelf sat that old toy truck, the one left behind the day he disappeared. Ethan picked it up, turning it slowly in his hands. "I don't remember everything," he said quietly. Angela stood in the doorway, watching him. "That's okay," she replied.